In a world obsessed with filters and carefully crafted facades, the strongest magnetism comes from what we're afraid to reveal. What if becoming truly unforgettable isn't about perfection, but about having the courage to be unapologetically real? Carl Jung, the master of the human psyche, uncovered a powerful truth. We don't crave what looks flawless. We're drawn to what feels genuine. The 7 paradoxical traits of an unforgettable person aren't the ones society told us to pursue. They're the qualities we were taught to hide, shrink, or silence. And here's the twist. What you've been concealing might be the very thing that makes you impossible to forget. We spend so much energy polishing the surface, our appearance, our tone, our image, while the real power stays buried underneath. That quiet strength, that steady calm, that ability to be fully present without performing for approval. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the one whose presence lingers long after you're gone. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius didn't speak to impress others. He wrote to understand himself. Epictetus didn't chase attention. He disciplined his inner world. And that's the real power move today. Owning your truth so completely that you no longer need permission to stand strong. So if you've ever felt like you're too much or somehow never enough, like you give and give yet still feel overlooked, this is where the narrative shifts. We're diving into 7 truths that make a person unforgettable, not through strategy, not through charm, but by becoming so grounded in who you are that no one else can replicate your presence. And if this kind of depth resonates with you, if it challenges you or brings you clarity, there's one simple, free way to support it. Tap subscribe. That's how we continue building this space with truth, depth, and no masks. Let's begin. Secret 1, stop being a filtered version of yourself. Let's be real, most of us are performing without even noticing, not on a stage, not under spotlights, but in everyday life, just trying to keep up. We edit our emotions the way we edit photos. We post smiles while feeling exhausted inside. We tell people we're fine because explaining the truth feels heavier. It becomes automatic. But here's the danger. When you perform for too long, you start forgetting who you are beneath the act. You trade authenticity for approval, and eventually, that approval stops feeling like enough. Aristotle once said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But how can you truly know yourself if you've spent years becoming who the world expected you to be? This goes beyond social media. It's a mindset. It's the way we soften our opinions in conversations or tone down our excitement so we don't seem like too much. It's how we shrink ourselves because at some point we learned that being fully seen was risky, too loud, too different, too inconvenient. Yet every person who ever shifted the world carried those very traits. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who your parents imagined, not who your job prefers, not the version your friends find easiest to handle. You, the raw, imperfect, evolving version. That's where your strength lives. Not in the polished image, but in the truth underneath it." Jung's entire psychological framework centered on individuation, the process of integrating every part of yourself, even the messy pieces, into something whole. And let's be honest, wholeness is far more powerful than perfection. Think about the people who've left a lasting mark on you. Were they the ones who always seemed perfectly put together? Or the ones who made you feel safe being imperfect? The ones who were honest even when it wasn't polished? The ones who laughed freely and cried without shame? Those are the people we remember. Not because they were flawless, but because they were real. And in a world flooded with artificiality, realness is revolutionary. Socrates challenged us to examine our lives instead of drifting through them unconsciously. Part of that examination requires asking difficult questions like, where am I pretending just to be accepted? Sit with that long enough and you'll start noticing the cracks, the subtle places where you chose comfort over truth. Those areas don't need judgment, they need awareness. That's where the masks live. And when you begin removing them, something unfamiliar but powerful emerges. Freedom. People will say being real is too much, too emotional, too quiet, too intense, too soft. But notice how too much often just means hard to control. And that's the point. Epictetus taught that freedom isn't doing whatever you want, it's refusing to be owned by what's outside you. When you stop bending to fit someone else's comfort zone, you reclaim that freedom. You start living from the inside out instead of the outside in. Plato described shadows on a cave wall, false images mistaken for reality. How many of us are still living in that cave, mistaking the diluted version of ourselves for who we truly are? But authenticity was never meant to be easy to digest. It's bold, it's layered, it challenges people, and yes, it's worth it. Because once you stop hiding, something remarkable happens. The people aligned with you begin to find you, not the ones who merely tolerate your light, but the ones who reflect it. And those who aren't ready for your truth drift away naturally. Let them. You were never meant to be watered down. You were meant to be whole, fully expressed and at peace with your contradictions. Not everyone will understand, and that's okay. You don't need a crowd of admirers. You need a few people who truly see you and value you because of who you are, not despite it. So the next time you feel yourself shrinking to make someone comfortable, pause. Ask, is this really me? Or is this the version they prefer? That single question can shift everything. Self-respect doesn't begin with boundaries. It begins with honesty. And the most important honesty is the one you owe yourself. In the end, we're not remembered for being liked by everyone. We're remembered for being real with the few who truly mattered. Let your presence be something people feel, not just something they notice. Let your authenticity speak louder than your appearance. Let your truth be the reason you become unforgettable. Secret 2. Grow without losing yourself. Growth is something everyone claims they want, but very few truly understand what it demands. Real growth isn't just reading more books or reaching a new milestone. It's releasing outdated versions of yourself without disconnecting from your core. It's choosing to evolve, not to win approval, but to align more deeply with who you actually are. And if we're honest, a lot of people confuse growth with performance. They shapeshift to blend in, not to level up. But blending in has never been the same as belonging. One changes your image, the other changes your life. Plato said, the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. That's the essence of real transformation. It's not about impressing people with how much you've changed. It's about standing in front of the mirror, knowing every step forward was your choice. Not pressure, not survival, not a mask, a decision, a steady, grounded decision to improve. Not for them, but for you. The Stoics understood this long before us. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, stop debating what a good person should be. Be one, simple direction, no performance, just embodiment. For the Stoics, growth wasn't about trophies, it was about character. It was about building an inner world that wasn't controlled by outside noise. While others chased popularity or pretended to have it all together, they focused on inner discipline, quiet strength, the kind of power that doesn't expire. And here's the truth. Evolving doesn't mean abandoning who you are. It means refining who you are. You don't discard your essence, you expand it. Think of it like upgrading your phone. It's still yours, it still looks familiar. but now it runs cleaner, faster, sharper. That's identity. You're not becoming someone else. You're removing bugs, rewriting old code, unlocking abilities that were always there. You've always had the potential. Growth simply activates it. Carl Jung spoke about individuation, the journey toward wholeness. Part of that journey requires shedding pieces of yourself that were built from fear, people-pleasing, or avoiding discomfort. Not everything you picked up along the way was meant to stay. Some beliefs, habits, even identities were survival tools. They protected you once, but now they're shrinking you. The moment you recognize that is the moment conscious evolution begins. Not reactive change, not proving a point, but understanding yourself on a deeper level. Let's make this clear. Choosing to grow doesn't mean you reject who you are today. It means you respect yourself too much to remain stagnant. That's the difference. People who resist change often think growth equals self-rejection. But real growth is honoring where you are while refusing to let it be your ceiling. It's saying, I've come far and I'm ready for more. That's not betrayal, that's self-respect. Socrates believed an unexamined life wasn't worth living. When you start examining yours, not harshly but curiously, you begin noticing patterns, where you've expanded, where you've stayed stuck, where you compromised your values just to sit in rooms you never even wanted to enter. That awareness is power. You can't shift what you refuse to face. But once you see clearly, you reclaim control. You realize you don't need permission to step into your next chapter. You can begin now. Growth is messy. It's not always glow-ups and breakthroughs. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's isolating. Sometimes it means walking away from people who only liked the smaller, quieter, more agreeable version of you. Let them go. You're not here to preserve comfort. You're here to protect your soul's evolution. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence isn't an act, it's a habit. Growth works the same way. It's not one dramatic leap, it's a daily commitment. Reflection instead of reaction, discipline instead of impulse, courage instead of comfort. You won't execute it perfectly every time. That's not the goal. Progress is. Becoming someone who doesn't need to announce their transformation because it's visible in how they move, speak, and carry themselves. You'll know you're evolving when your silence communicates more than your explanations, when your peace outweighs your anxiety, when triggers turn into lessons, when the people you once chased start seeking clarity because you've made it unmistakable who you are and where you're headed. If you've been wondering whether it's time to change, this is your sign. Don't wait for rock bottom. Don't wait for approval. You're allowed to outgrow what once felt like home. You're allowed to stretch, pivot, and release labels that no longer fit. Growth isn't betrayal. Growth is alignment. And when it's rooted in values instead of fear, it becomes untouchable. You don't evolve to be loved. You evolve because you already respect yourself enough to move forward. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not the version that stayed small for acceptance, but the one that kept becoming regardless of who understood. Keep becoming. Keep becoming. Secret 3. Own your flaws with confidence. We've been fed the illusion that to be respected or remembered, we must be flawless. That every rough edge needs smoothing, every mistake erased, every imperfection hidden behind polish. But here's the truth you only realize after exhausting yourself chasing perfection. Perfection doesn't create connection. Struggle does. Humanity does. Realness does. No one bonds over how perfect your life appears. They connect with the moments you stumbled and still stood back up. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But deep self-knowledge doesn't come from listing strengths. It comes from confronting your shadows, from looking at your flaws and saying, "That's part of me, and I'm not running from it." Shame only thrives in secrecy. The moment you expose it to light, it weakens. And that's when your power returns. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." The trait you've been hiding, the one you believe makes you difficult, emotional, different, might be the very quality that sets you apart. It could be the thing that makes someone else feel understood. But if you suppress it out of fear, you deny both yourself and others something powerful. We all carry scars, emotional, mental, maybe physical. And society constantly tells us to cover them up, hide the pain, hide the past, hide the sensitivity. But scars aren't weakness, they're evidence of healing, proof that you endured and didn't quit. That resilience is magnetic. People don't remember the one who never cracked. They remember the one who cracked and rebuilt. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that what matters isn't what happens to you, but how you respond. Your mistakes aren't your identity. Your reaction to them is. That's your character. That's your story. And stories move people not when everything goes right, but when the main character walks through fire and keeps going. Socrates reminded us, be as you wish to seem, not flawless, not untouchable, just real. Because people aren't looking for idols. They're not searching for perfection. They're searching for proof that being human doesn't mean being broken. And when you show up with your flaws instead of hiding them, you become a mirror, a reflection of what's possible when someone stops trying to be untouchable and starts choosing honesty. Think about it for a second. What's one part of your story you've been keeping quiet because you thought it made you less? One chapter you avoid mentioning because you're afraid it would change how people see you. Now flip it. What if that very chapter is the reason someone would never forget you? What if the thing you've been ashamed of is exactly what someone else needs to hear so they don't feel alone? Plato believed truth wasn't only something external to chase, but something internal to uncover. And what truth is more powerful than saying, yes, I struggled, yes, I failed, and I'm still standing? That's not weakness. That's strength in its rawest form. That's you owning your humanity instead of shrinking for someone else's comfort. The world doesn't need another polished personality. It needs real people. People who went through pain and didn't turn bitter. People who still care deeply after being hurt. Who still show up fully even when vulnerability feels risky. That kind of presence leaves a mark. That kind of energy shifts a room without trying. You don't have to apologize for who you used to be. That version of you did the best they could with what they knew at the time. You honor them not by erasing them, but by building on them. Growth isn't pretending your past didn't happen. It's owning it so completely that no one can weaponize it against you. So yes, you have flaws. Welcome to being human. You're not defective. You're real, and real people don't need perfection. They need honesty, resilience, and the courage to show up even while they're still healing. Secret 4, stop needing, start choosing. There's a quiet desperation many people carry without realizing it. The urge to be picked, to be noticed, to be validated. It starts early. We raise our hands and wait to be called on. We learn to be agreeable and hope someone approves. But here's what nobody explains. The more you chase being chosen, the less secure you feel in your own place. Because when you wait to be picked, you hand over your power. You silently say, I need you to confirm my worth before I believe it. That's not strength. That's permission-seeking disguised as connection. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop waiting to be chosen. Start choosing. That one adjustment is transformative. Instead of shrinking to fit into someone else's space, you stand firmly in your own and ask, does this person deserve access to my energy? Not from ego, but from alignment. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Part of that learning is understanding you don't have to beg for belonging. You're not here to audition for love. You're not a product competing for approval. You're a human being, complex, evolving, complete. The right people won't require persuasion. They'll recognize your value naturally. Carl Jung spoke about projection, how people place their unmet needs onto others. So if someone makes you feel like you must constantly prove yourself, that often says more about their inner emptiness than your worth. That's their lesson to face, not yours to absorb. Your lesson is this: you are the chooser. Your life is your space. Your energy is valuable. Not everyone deserves unlimited access just because they show interest. Imagine how your relationships would change if instead of asking, "Do they like me?" you asked, "Do they align with who I'm becoming?" Not the version of you that seeks applause, not the one that settles, but the one grounded in growth and peace. When you shift that focus, you stop trying to be more likable and start living more truthfully. And when you live like that, people feel it. They respect you not for what you offer them, but for how you carry yourself. Plato once suggested that character is revealed in how we handle power. Real personal power, the steady, quiet kind, comes from standards, from understanding that love and attention aren't things to chase. They're things to welcome when they arrive with sincerity. You decide who steps closer and who remains at a distance, not to manipulate, but to protect your peace. And peace is valuable. You worked for it. Don't trade it cheaply. There's a confidence that doesn't announce itself, a presence that doesn't perform. When you stop chasing validation, people sense it. They feel your boundaries. They feel your self-respect. And something inside them recognizes it as rare. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not volume, not constant agreement, but wholeness. You didn't hand out pieces of yourself to everyone who offered attention. Socrates taught that real change comes from building the new instead of fighting the old. So build that version of you, the one who doesn't shrink, the one who doesn't wait to be selected, the one who knows the right people won't make them question their value. From now on, don't measure yourself by how many people want you. Measure yourself by how aligned you are with your own truth. When you move with that kind of intention, you feel it. You stand differently. You choose differently. You no longer need to be chosen. You already chose yourself. Secret 5. Be intense without apology. There's an unspoken expectation floating around. Don't feel too much. Don't speak too passionately. Don't care too deeply. Be relaxed. Be easy. Be low maintenance. But let's be honest, that doesn't build connection. It builds distance. It turns you into a watered-down version of yourself. And if someone has ever told you that you're too emotional, too sensitive, too intense, hear this clearly. That isn't a weakness, it's depth. You feel strongly because you're alive. You care deeply because your heart is engaged. You express with passion because you're not numb. That doesn't make you too much. It makes you impossible to ignore. Carl Jung believed emotions weren't meant to be suppressed but integrated. He said there is no coming to consciousness without discomfort. That intensity inside you isn't there to destroy you. It's there to awaken you. It's the part of you that refuses to let life stay shallow. And yes, that depth might unsettle some people, but that's not yours to fix. Their discomfort often reflects their emotional limits, not your emotional awareness. Let's talk about that awareness. Emotional depth isn't weakness, it's intelligence. Aristotle spoke about moderation, but he never meant suppressing your nature. He meant mastering it, directing it, feeling deeply without drowning in it, loving fully without losing yourself. That's the line between chaos and courage. And make no mistake, choosing to feel in a world that numbs itself is courageous. Most people distract themselves. They scroll, they detach, they build walls. You show up with your heart still open. That's not too much, that's rare. So why do people label intensity as a flaw? Because intensity can't be controlled. It requires presence, it exposes truth, it forces depth. And that level of honesty unsettles those who hide behind masks. Your passion confronts their apathy. Your tears confront their numbness. Your authenticity confronts their performance. Instead of rising to meet you, they label you. Too intense, too emotional, too complicated. But that's not truth. That's projection. The Stoics never taught emotional denial. They taught emotional understanding. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That includes your emotional world. You don't need to shrink your fire. You need to guide it. Let your emotions inform you, not dominate you. That's maturity, that's strength, that's differentiation. Socrates said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." And knowing yourself means recognizing how deeply you feel without turning that into self-criticism. Your sensitivity isn't fragility. It's perception. It's your internal radar. It's why you sense tension no one names. It's why your intuition runs strong. It's why the people who truly connect with you feel understood at a level they rarely experience. You're not too much. You just refuse to live small. You refuse to fake indifference. You refuse to detach from what matters. That doesn't make you difficult. It makes you real. In a culture that teaches emotional shutdown, you choose openness. That's power. That's memorable. So the next time someone says you're too much, don't argue. Just smile and let them find less. You're not compressing yourself to fit someone else's comfort zone. You're expanding into your full emotional range. The right people won't ask you to shrink. They'll meet you at your depth. They'll value your passion instead of retreating from it. Because people who feel deeply love deeply, and people who love deeply leave impact. Don't dilute that. Don't dim it. Be all of you, bold, passionate, honest. That's how you leave a mark, not through agreement, but through authenticity. Secret 6. Hold your standards without guilt. There's a quiet shift that happens when someone finally realizes they deserve more. Not loudly, not arrogantly, just calmly. A steady presence that says, "I'm done settling." Suddenly old patterns fade, one-sided connections, draining conversations, constant tolerance. The pretending stops. Not because the world changed, but because they did. Once you recognize your worth, chasing ends, begging ends. You stop accepting crumbs of attention and start waiting for substance. Epictetus said, "Never value anything as profitable to yourself, which shall compel you to break your promise or lose your self-respect." If keeping someone requires betraying yourself, the cost is already too high. People who understand that are powerful in the most grounded way. They don't explode. They don't manipulate. They simply walk away when peace is repeatedly disturbed, and that kind of person is hard to control. Most people aren't afraid of losing someone who needs them. They're afraid of losing someone who doesn't need them, but chooses them. That's the difference. When you know what energizes you and what drains you, you stop deciding from loneliness. You decide from clarity, and clarity is magnetic. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But once you do, you stop waiting for others to validate you. You stop performing for affection. And when you operate from that grounded place, people sense stability. They sense self-respect. They sense that you won't shrink. Boundaries aren't barriers. They're filters. They don't push the right people away. They keep the wrong dynamics out. Boundaries say, "This is what I allow. This is what I don't." Not from coldness, but from clarity. And clarity protects your energy. It keeps you from constantly repairing damage that never should have entered your life. Socrates taught that change comes from building the new rather than fighting the old. So instead of trying to convince people to value you, raise your standard. Show up in a way that doesn't bend just to keep temporary peace. Because peace that costs your self-worth is just self-abandonment in disguise. Knowing what you deserve isn't superiority, it's self-recognition. It shifts how you speak, how you love, how you choose. You stop entertaining half-effort, half-truth, half-presence. You don't demand perfection, but you require consistency. You don't want fantasy, you want honesty. And instead of asking, "Am I asking for too much?" you begin asking, "Why did I accept so little?" Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." So let self-respect become repetition. Let saying no when something feels wrong become normal. Let choosing peace over popularity become instinct. The world will recalibrate. The wrong connections will fade. The aligned ones will strengthen. Revisit your standards, not your fantasies, your non-negotiables, the principles that protect your time, your energy, your sanity. Once those are solid, you stop hoping to be treated well. You expect it, and expectation shifts everything. Secret 7, love from fullness, not from lack. There's a kind of love that feels heavy. It whispers, "Don't leave. I need you to survive." It isn't malicious, but it's weighted. It clings. When love comes from emptiness, it becomes transactional, a quiet attempt at emotional rescue. You're not offering love freely, you're offering need. And even when it's sincere, it exhausts both people. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Because when you truly accept yourself, you stop asking someone else to complete you. But that's exactly where real love begins. Because when you accept yourself fully, without conditions, love stops being something you depend on to survive and becomes something you consciously choose to give. You're no longer handing someone your broken pieces hoping they'll fix you. You're whole. And when you're whole, your love feels lighter. It feels peaceful. It uplifts instead of overwhelming. A lot of people confuse intensity with love. They think clinging equals connection, but real connection isn't built on the fear of losing someone. It's built on the freedom to choose them again and again, without desperation, without dependency. That kind of love is rare because it's not about possession, it's about presence. It says, "I'm here because I want to be, not because I'll fall apart without you." The Stoics taught that our peace should never depend on what we can't control. Epictetus reminded us that true freedom belongs to the disciplined mind. In relationships, that means being emotionally free, free from needing validation to feel worthy, free from giving love just to secure it in return. When you've done the inner work, when you've filled your own cup, you stop chasing love. You radiate it, and radiance is unforgettable. Think about the person who walks into a room calm, grounded, quietly confident. Their joy doesn't depend on attention. Their presence doesn't demand reassurance. You feel it instantly. It's magnetic, not because it feeds ego, but because it reflects stability. You won't find that energy in someone emotionally starving. You find it in someone who knows they're already full and shares from abundance, not from need. Socrates warned that the hottest love often burns out the fastest. That's the kind of love built on obsession and emptiness, trying to fill a void through another person. But when love flows from fullness, from a life you've built, from peace you've cultivated in solitude, it doesn't burn out. It matures, it breathes. It doesn't collapse under pressure because it's not asking to be rescued. It's offering partnership. This is why filling your own cup matters now, not later, not when someone worthy appears. If your cup is empty, You'll drain every relationship trying to satisfy a thirst only you can quench. But when your cup is full, when you've healed, built self-respect, discovered your value, you give from overflow. And the right people won't try to consume you. They'll appreciate the abundance and protect it. Aristotle spoke about philia, a virtuous form of love rooted in mutual growth and goodness. That kind of bond doesn't cling or control. It strengthens both people. It encourages expansion. And you only step into that kind of connection when you arrive whole, not searching for completion. So ask yourself honestly, am I loving from a wound or from wisdom? Am I offering my heart from fear or from freedom? Love shouldn't feel like a lifeline. It should feel like light. You don't need someone to complete you. You need someone who complements the wholeness you fought to build. That's the energy people are afraid to lose. That's the presence they won't easily replace. Take care of yourself first. Strengthen your inner world. Know your worth so deeply that when you love, it reflects your fullness instead of pleading to be filled. The right ones won't just stay. They'll value that light because they'll recognize how rare it is. And you'll recognize it too. The most unforgettable energy you'll ever carry is the quiet certainty that you are already whole. No proving, no performing, no chasing. When you choose yourself first, the right people won't ask you to shrink. They'll grow alongside you. If this message moved something inside you, there's another video waiting on your screen to take you even deeper. Don't miss it. Thank you for being here and for being part of Stoic Journal. This space isn't just about philosophy, it's about becoming, slowly, intentionally, powerfully. And remember, the journey doesn't stop here. We'll be here when you're ready for the next step.